aura so bright. Anna's pulse surged as she approached the draper's shop. Her heart clenched as though her path might be barred, her custom turned away. That was ridiculous. She was a customer. Who knew fool turned customers away? Setting a hand on the door, she set her jaw and pushed, a sigh easing between clenched teeth when it swung open. Inside, the air was dotted with specks of fibres from the fabrics, spooling on eddies of air released by the swing of the door. She inhaled. So much of her life had changed, but the smell of fabric was the same as it had ever been. At the broad counter, an assistant was busy serving a young couple, so Anna browsed the goods on display. All she could afford today was a length of plain white linen. A new village meant a new living to earn. Once more she would start from nothing and build her way up. She'd begin by hemming a dozen handkerchiefs, then sell them, buy more cloth, and repeat the action until she had enough money to trade up. The couple already in the store required far more than a length of plain linen. She could calculate their wealth from their clothes, and the young woman had a written list of requirements, sending the assistant scurrying to and fro to fulfill her desires. Murmured conversation punctuated the busy movements as the woman asked questions and made her choices. Anna scrutinized both customers from the corner of her eye. The woman was intent on her errand, leaning on the counter. The man, by contrast, looked bored, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the room. He'd clearly been pressed into accompanying the woman when he'd be happier elsewhere. The pair were the right age to be newlyweds, or perhaps still courting. The woman might be selecting fabric for her trousseau. A lump rose in Anna's throat and she swallowed it down. The woman was wealthy and loved. Her partner might not be enthusiastic about shopping, but he held her in high enough regard to be willing to squire her around. An ache bloomed in her chest. Would she ever inspire such devotion? Anna studied the young woman. She was 20, perhaps, a few years older than Anna. Her clothes were beautiful, in cloth, cut, and design. Anna felt young and frumpy and inconsequential by comparison. The woman gestured to the assistant, debating the next item on her list. She hadn't even noticed Anna lurking behind her. But why would she? Her focus was on her errand, confident that life, and this particular shop, would provide everything she desired. The ache in her chest grew. What Anna wouldn't give to change places, to believe that life could be full of ease, her biggest concern what shade of fabric to choose for her next gown or a warm winter coat. Blinking rapidly, she wrenched her attention away from the woman. She turned and froze. The young man was inspecting her with a lazy half-smile, drinking her in as ardently as she'd been watching the woman. His smile widened, his head dipping in acknowledgement, as though he liked what he saw, as though he actually saw her. Her cheeks heated while shock held her rigid. Why was he looking at her when the vision that was his sweetheart stood an arm span away? Anna dropped her gaze to the floor, but his appearance was seared in her mind. He was handsome, well-dressed like the woman. A head taller than Anna, he had broad shoulders set off to perfection by the cut of his fine jacket. The idea slid into her mind that sewing a shirt to show off those shoulders to advantage would be far more pleasant than hemming handkerchiefs for pennies of profit. Discontent soared through her. She didn't want to have to start over. She didn't want to start small and build yet again. She wanted much more than she was ever likely to get. "Garrow!" Her eyes jerked back up when the woman called sharply to secure the man's attention. She gathered up his arm and tugged him towards the counter, demanding his opinion. Anna let herself take a look at his broad back, then dropped her gaze once more. She turned to the bolts of fabric, trying to distract herself by making a choice she no longer had enthusiasm for. She still heard the cadence of their voices. The woman's back and forth was interspersed with the man, Garrow's, observations. His voice was pleasant, but his tone was short, nothing of the lover displayed there. He sounded bored, even exasperated, and didn't try to hide it. Anna reconsidered their relationship, not newlyweds. Perhaps they were betrothed and didn't want to be, or he didn't want to be at least. "By the skies, sis, get both. You know Papa will pay whatever you ask." His cry explained the matter. Brother and sister. A glow of satisfaction lit in Anna's chest. A strange vindication that they weren't a couple the way she'd assumed, feared, guessed. As though granted permission, she turned, only to find Garrow already looking at her. He caught her eye and winked, then stepped towards her, leaving his sister and the assistant to continue negotiations. When he reached Anna's side, he leaned close and murmured, "My apologies. Dyla may take forever to make her mind up. If you have shopping to do elsewhere, I'd recommend you come back later." Anna breathed in the woodsy scent that clung to him. She couldn't have moved away if you'd paid her. She smiled up at him. I don't mind. I'm not in a hurry. I can just look around. He smiled, a sudden bright grin that made her breath stutter. Likewise. The scenery is very pleasant here. His gaze held hers while her heart pounded. She took a breath. She could do much better than handkerchiefs, if someone would only give her half a chance. I'm a seamstress, she blurted. I could make you a shirt, finest you've ever worn. Her hand lifted, the gentlest brush of his collar. A spark seemed to pass between them, tingling into her fingertips and along her arms. He turned to face her more squarely, the heat of his broad chest warming her. Finest ever? That's a bold claim. His tone, and the expression in his eyes, stilled the air between them. She licked her lips, speech evading her. His smile hitched higher. A bold claim for a bold woman. I like it. His gaze swept her up and down. Something twisted tightly inside her. She wasn't sure what to make of his words, but she knew she craved the admiration in his gaze. She still hadn't found a single word when he reached out, his fingers snagging a lock of her hair, trailing down the bright length of it. Pretty, he murmured. She wasn't sure whether he meant her hair or more than that. Heat rose alongside a strange restlessness. She wanted something, she just wasn't sure what. His fingers were still tangled in her hair. She lifted her hand, curling her fingers around his wrist. She was unsure whether she meant to push him away or hold him close forever. She wanted to borrow his confidence, to bask in his smile. She wanted to sew him a shirt. That wasn't too much to ask, surely. A simple thing that could transform her life. A wealthy patron. And a shirt was so much more interesting to sew than handkerchiefs. Garrow's eyes widened, irises turning dark. He spoke as though the words had taken him by surprise. I'd like you to do more than make me a shirt. Her heart swelled, although she wasn't perfectly sure what he meant. His fingers curled around hers, holding their clasped hands between their chests. But that would do for a start. Anna's heart jolted. Fingers still interlaced, Garrow guided her to the other side of the shop, where a shelf of flawless silk sat waiting for her. By the time they left the draper's shop, laden with enough fabric for Anna to make 2 shirts for Garrow, as well as a new dress for herself, the sun was dipping in the sky. Oh, Anna blinked in distress. I must go. It'll take a couple of hours to walk, and I want to get home before dark. Walk? Garrow's arm stole around her waist, squeezing reassurance. You needn't walk. I'll take you. You don't have to do that. She looked up at his smiling face. This was overwhelming. It had all happened so fast, and now he was looking at her as though she were the most precious thing on earth. And oh, she wished he might never stop. But I do. He brushed her nose with a fingertip. I want to take care of you. Walk indeed. He caught her free hand and swung it between them as he led her back to the inn where he promised a carriage was waiting. Also waiting were Garrow's sister and an older woman like enough that she must be their mother. Anna's steps slowed at the expressions that met her. Garrow? Dyla's hand rested on her hip, her expression twisted in discontent. There you are. The older woman said nothing, but Anna's heart sank at the purse of her lips as she scanned Anna up and down. She hung back, trying to hide behind Garrow. Turning away, the older woman clicked her fingers and instructed the servant who materialized to have their carriage brought round. We've been waiting hours, Dyla complained. Garrow shrugged, grinning, seeming not to notice the atmosphere. I didn't notice the time passing. He smiled at Anna and her stomach flipped. It was warm enough to chase away the feelings the older woman had caused. Perhaps she'd just look at Garrow for the rest of her days, ignore everyone else. Garrow looked back at his family. I'd like to introduce you to Anna. She lives in Lardell. I've promised to take her home. The atmosphere had been cold. Now it turned icy. That is not appropriate, Garrow, his mother snapped. He frowned. I promised to take her home. His tone was hard, his jaw tight. Anna tried to pull away, but he tightened his grip on her fingers. It doesn't matter, she murmured. I can walk. The older woman nodded, grimly satisfied. Garrow's chin lifted. I made a promise. I don't intend to break it. There isn't room in the carriage, the older woman stated coolly. We've made a great many purchases today. She simply won't fit. Garrow's jaw worked, then eased. We'll ride. He glanced around the inn. I'm sure I can hire mounts here. Oh, really? Dyla tutted. Garrow ignored her, his focus on Anna. She wanted to drown in his gaze. Do you ride? He asked softly. Anna had never been on horseback in her life before, but she didn't care. Garrow wanted to be with her. He wanted to make her life easier, and never mind who he upset. More than a patron, she had a champion. She squeezed his hand. "I can learn," she promised with a smile. That was A Mirror So Bright by Katy Haye. Thanks for listening.